All right, so I'm going to get into the second episode of Trainer Talk today. Talking about accumulation versus intensification, right? So, mainly that deals with volume and intensity, as you'll see here. It's a very important thing, very basic, right? For all of our training that we're going to do with any athlete, we're going to have accumulation versus intensification phases, right? The basic differences: accumulation is training as preparation, intensification is training for performance. Accumulation, you're really going to build your base. It's not going to be what makes all the differences for you. That will be your intensification phase. The intensification phase makes those adaptations because it has a more potent stimulus, and I'll get into what this means later in the video. Even though intensification is where you get all your adaptations, right? It's not going to show up during your intensification phase. When you're dealing with more potent stimulus, you're going to have to recover from that stimulus, right, before you can see the results from it. So just because that's when you get your actual adaptation and growth doesn't mean it's going to show up in that exact month or whatever that phase may be, however long it is. Accumulation, you'll see this chart I made here. Don't really focus on the numbers. It's kind of just to represent what it's going to look like. But we have week 1 through week 4 here. Week 1, you can see we have our lowest volume. And then week 2, our volume goes up. Week 3, our volume goes up. Week 4 is what's called a deload week. So after increasing our volume and lowering intensity or maintaining intensity, we go to week 4 to kind of take some stress off the body. We know we're about to jump into an intensification phase. We kind of want to give our body a week to recoup, and then we're going to jump into that intensification phase. Now, with younger athletes, I do a lot of accumulation phases just over and over and over and over again. This can happen for 1 year, 6 months, 2 years. It really depends where the athlete is at, mostly depending on age. But really, it comes down to when we're testing. If we're still getting results from just accumulation phases, that's telling me we don't need to go to intensification yet. We are still getting adaptations from this. And then once we start to plateau over a period of time, we can advance to our intensification phases. Accumulation focuses. So work on weaknesses is the biggest part here. It's elastic athletes would work mainly strength. Obviously, that's a weakness for them. And then power athletes would do elastic work, and that's their weakness. You also have to do what's going to be coming up in your training. Once we go into these intensification phases, we want to prepare for what's coming in the next month. So a big part of this accumulation phase is just to get us prepared for that. So we are going to have more regressed exercises of what we'll do in the next phase, because that next phase will already be written out in any of my programs. So I'll know what we're doing, and I will prepare us for that in that accumulation phase while working on our weaknesses. We're going to have a lot more basic exercises here, things you would commonly see in programs, nothing super advanced. Things like skips, short bounds, gallops, power skips, maybe straight leg bounds, things like that. Nothing super crazy. Things that all those help coordination and sprinting. They're not really physiological adapters there. Regular lifting with very little or no complex methods. By no complex methods, I mean adding bands or chains, or lifting at, 45%. We're going for 2 reps at 10 sets, and we're lifting, velocity based. Things like that are more complex methods. Hurdle hops, box jumps, broad jumps, depth landings are all much more basic plyometrics, things that we're not going to get a ton out of. And it's going to prepare us for, I shouldn't say not get a ton out of. We're going to get a ton out of it in terms of preparation. It's not going to make us a largely better athlete. But early on in development, they can make a huge difference, especially if people are lacking elastic ability. That would be huge. This is a program example I have here. This was actually my program. This was an SPP phase, which just means specific preparatory phase, aka I'm doing things that more play to my strengths already. I'm getting closer to season, so I'm kind of trying to peak myself. So I want to do things that are strengths for me. And I still want it to be basic so it's not super taxing as I am raising the volume here. So looking at this, we got our ISO lunge holds. Those are great. They don't have a lot of knockback on the body, I should say, or they don't hurt us a lot. It's not going to affect us in our training, but we're going to get a lot of strength gains out of it, especially in with the lunge hold when you're in a deep lunge position, hip flexors, the adductors, the hamstrings, anything like that. Standing triple jump, I always have something to test. If you're not testing in your training, you're wrong. It's that simple. It really is. The only way you know you're doing things right is by testing. It's really a guessing game because everybody's a little bit different. I had hill sprints in here, and you'll see we go from 120 total meters to 160 to 180, and then we have our deload week where we go back down to 120 there. Hill sprints are good for some power athletes. It's less eccentric load on the body. It's also just some natural resistance in going uphill there, which can be good. A little longer ground contact times, which can be good and bad, but in some situations it's good, where you can produce more force, and then you can apply that to normal sprints where you're going faster ground contact times, and you can hopefully learn to apply that force in that shorter amount of time. Mini bounds resisted. I don't really do this with any athletes other than advanced athletes. I do try some more advanced techniques on myself. Not usually something I would do with a lot of clients yet where they are at. But once again, it's still not a super potent stimulus. The shorter bounds don't do as much. Longer bounds can be great for elastic athletes. The resisted bounds do add a little bit to it, but based on programming in the past, I already knew that I had kind of developed we'll say, resistance in my nervous system to things like this, so I could handle that stimulus at a high level. Once again, it's going up. It's 60 total meters, 75 total meters, 90 meters, and then all the way down to 20 meters, really dropping off at the end there. A split deadlift, a standard lift. We're trying to focus more on single leg strength, unilateral. We are in an SPP phase, so I'm working that hinge with strength, and it's not with bands or chains. It's not a super big taxer on my nervous system. It's more of a local adaptation. Local adaptation meaning in the muscles and things like that. Nervous system is what I would call global. Global meaning it's going to affect my entire body. It's going to tax us for more time than a local adaptation would or local effects would, right? So dynamic squatted lunge, that would be like a weakness for me. Working on basically an oscillating isometric where I have to turn the muscles on quickly and relax them quickly. It's a big part in sprinting. Muscles are not activated the entire time. They're going in and out, and that's a big thing to work on, especially in power athletes like myself. And then iso straight leg, similar thing. It's not super taxing on the body, but it's going to help us strengthen our glutes, strengthen our hips, and all things like that, which is always great. Never hurts to have that. I just have some pictures of some stuff in here. Hurdle hops, this guy's doing it single leg. You can do it bilateral. Really depends on the month, that whatever you're doing. Box jump, super basic stuff. A-skip, violent A-skip. This is a big thing I talk about in pushing in your skips. We don't want to just skip for no reason. And then lunges, just common things you see in a gym all the time, people doing them constantly, because it is more basic movements. Is what more novice trainees should be doing for adaptation. And intensification volumes, right? Here's where we kind of flip to the other side. So you'll notice that this is only 3 weeks. There is no 4th week. The 4th week I like to do active recovery because intensification can have such a large effect on the nervous system. You really want to give it a chance to recover and reboot itself, basically. We're starting with a lower volume than we would in our last intensification phase, not including our deload week. So because we're doing more complex movements, which I'll get into in the next 2-3 slides. But our volume is decreasing over those 3 weeks. while that intensification is that line right there going across. You can kind of see that. That's going up as our volume goes down. So the weights are going to be higher, the speeds are going to be faster, things of that nature. The intensification focuses. It's more specific to the sport and the athlete's strengths. This is huge. Power athletes want to do things that are more heavy lifting, cleans, resisted sprints when they're closer to season. However, I don't want to just start lifting all the time if I'm right next to the season. We need to be sprinting because that's what we're actually doing, working fast contractions, working isometrics for overcoming isometrics with high force, but things that are going to correlate to power athletes, basically more force dominant movements. Elastic athletes, depth jumps, repeat plyos, speed strength exercises, super quick things, not super heavy, not a lot of force, very elastic, focused on tendons and just very quick elastic energy movements. Higher complexity exercises. This is a big part of it. So the way we can get this potent stimulus that I was talking about is by doing exercises that are going to challenge our nervous system more than the previous exercises we were doing. If you're not challenging your nervous system more, you will not adapt. It's really that simple. So banded and chain lifting, what that can do for you is just for chains, you're gonna go down and the chains are gonna hit the ground, so it's gonna be lighter at the bottom, and it's gonna teach you to accelerate up. When it's just a normal bar, you're decelerating at the top of the movement because you know you have to stop. This is gonna keep you accelerating. Adding bands also does that, but it also accelerates your eccentric, so you're going faster on the way down, similar to how you would on a jump or like a vertical jump or a broad jump, anything like that. Olympic lifts are complex movements. The hip speed on these is the biggest developer. I mean, you're moving a ton of force, which is great for power athletes, even elastic athletes. And the speed that your hips are moving at is similar to sprint speed, which is why this is more specific and more complex than what we would be doing before. Flying tens, hitting your top speed, is going to be the biggest developer of anything you can do. There's nothing more potent as a stimulus than max velocity sprinting. Speed plows 2 sprints, so you're doing those speed plows for the coordination and you're going into a sprint. That's just adding more higher velocity into those things. And then resisted sprints, what I like to use for both elastic and power athletes. As I said in my last video, I have gotten great results from using resisted sprints, producing longer ground contact times and putting more force on the ground, and then being able to do faster sprints where you can then learn to put that same force in the ground in a shorter ground contact time as you pick up speed. And that's really a great developer right there. Depth jumps, depth leaps, high hurdle jumps, that's coming off of a box and getting up either as high as you can or as fast as you can. Same thing with leaps, that would just be going out instead of up. And then high hurdle jumps, when you're coming down from the ground and gravity's pushing down on you like that, it's so much force on the ground. It's actually insane. And getting off the ground that quick is very specific to sport, but it's also just so potent in the amount of force that is coming down on the ground when you're coming off of a box or you're coming down from a hurdle and you're trying to get off quick, but also with power and speed. And what these are actually going to do, so in terms of, a lot of people think it's all about building the muscles and things like that. A lot of it's actually neural, which I have talked about. And all of these things will help you to have a better firing rate and better coordination of your muscles and synchronization. What this means is your body has nerves and muscles, and the nerves that are connected to the muscles are called motor units. The more motor units you recruit, the better. However, for movements that are quick, you have to have a quick firing rate, which means these have to turn on very quickly and turn off very quickly. Now, when you have better coordination and synchronization, if you turn them on at the same time and you can fire them quicker, this is when we really start getting those neural adaptations and times start dropping, jumps start going way higher and way farther, and lifts start going up. That's that neural adaptation I'm talking about. And here's a program example from something I did in May. Once again, close to season, so focusing on my strengths, but still, we are close to season. I want to be sprinting. I want to be doing things I will be doing on the field. So I got a flying 10 here. That's my test. I also have 10-yard sprints because if I'm doing heavy resisted sprints as a power athlete, I want to do something fast with it. It's also kind of a test. Sometimes I would do 3. Sometimes if I was having a crappy day and I was like, I need to get this time down, I would keep running. Would not do that with my clients. But if you're training on your own, have fun with it sometimes. It's all about competing. I mean, that's what we're all here for. We're all competitors. And that's why you're listening to this, to try and get better. So heavy resisted sprints was a big thing for me. I really replace a lot of lifting volume with these because it's so specific to sprinting, but it's still a strength for me as a power athlete. So 160 total meters, then down to 120 total meters, then down to 100 total meters as it's going down. As it's going down, that 85% is 85% of body weight. So for me at 200 pounds, I don't even know what 80% is. 160? And then so add 5% to that, it's like, I don't know, 170 or whatever it is. And then add 5 pounds, 175. And then, once we get to 90%, maybe we're at like 180. Right? So that's kind of that intensification we're talking about, is that weight getting heavier. And I would like to time this, even though the speed will go down. We want to see those times at a consistent basis, kind of at each one of those different weights. Also, I could program it for how much speed I'm losing each time. Excuse me. And then a snatch, complex movement. I can't do cleans because I broke my wrist. That's why I do the snatch. With that pull, it's all hinge exercise. That's another thing. In getting specific with our intensification phases, I do more hinge stuff because I work more sprinting. I work more sprinting movements. I need to develop my posterior chain and speed through the hips and knees and ankles, but right here, it's obviously mostly the hips. And we did 3x3, 3x2, 3x1, so 9 total reps, 6 total reps, 3 total reps, right? 85% of my max, 90% of my max, 95% of my max. So we go down that way. And then the WEC 45 deadlift. This is the most specific lift that you can really do towards sprinting. And what it is a trap bar deadlift with your heels elevated on, I just usually use weight plates. You can use a heel raiser if you have it. It's really up to you and your own personal preference. And a big part of it is you're going to start on the outside of your foot. So kind of like, I would like to say the palm of your pinky toe, or like right underneath it, which would be called eversion, which is where you land in the ground in sprinting, right? We're going to land in an everted position, and we're going to roll from putting a lot of force from that kind of toe or palm of the pinky toe and rolling on our foot as we lift up to go into our big toe or the palm of our big toe. And that's how we are going to sprint. We land on the outside of our foot and roll to the inside of our foot. Very similar how we're sprinting, and producing force in that WEC 45 deadlift is going to help us do that and be able to produce that force. That's why it's so specific. It's also working hinge and squat movements at the same time, so it really works pretty much everything that we can think of, which is why I love it. It's my favorite lift to program in. And we go down 9 total reps, 6 total reps, 3 total reps, just like the snatch. They don't always have to be the same. They just happen to be for this program I was doing. 87.5% of max, 90% of max, 92.5%. My intensification phases are usually 85% and over. That's when you're getting real neural adaptations. That's what's considered heavy lifting in the lifting community usually. And then here are some of those, exercises that you'll be doing. Over here we have Usain Bolt. Obviously, if you can sprint as fast as Usain Bolt, it's a pretty freaking potent stimulus. I mean, that's unreal. And then you got these banded squats. You can see that's going to accelerate him down. and it's going to add more tension as he goes up there. And you do put weight on the bar. You just factor the weight of the bands in to your max when you're programming that. And the depth jumps, he's coming off the box. He's doing single leg here. It's good. I mean, unilateral is more specific. I usually do it 2 feet. And if you're doing that, I usually do it from a higher box. And then you have the snatch. This is a ton of weight. Nothing that I could do, let me tell you that, but a great stimulus for all athletes right there. So you just learned a little bit about intensification and accumulation, right? And you can use this in your program if you're programming yourself, or reach out to me, comment, DM me, find me on Instagram, anything. I will write a free program the first time. After that, we can see where you're at, see where you're going, kind of test. I do training out of Frankfort, Illinois at Big Bear Barbell Club, and just in any open field if we're just doing speed training. So reach out to me if you have any other programming questions or any questions about intensification and accumulation. You can put below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like if you did, and subscribe. We just passed 100 subscribers, so thank you. I'm very appreciative of that, and I look forward to keep growing this channel in the future.